Thank you, everyone, for joining our panel discussion about the future of smart cities and the safety of this future. We can't think of being smart if we're not safe about it in all aspects of safety. Today we have the second session. The first session was presented a month ago, and it was mainly regarding the FIFA 22 framework. And this session is now available online on YouTube and on our websites. It's in various degrees of detail. Plus, we produce a report, and the report gets more complicated. Every month, we add to this report from our experience. Today, our focus will be on one main subject, but it kind of triggers the aspect of the marriage between the two, which is basically the cyber forensics and cybercrime world, and at the same time, what this relates to law enforcement, analysis tools, what investments are going in innovation, and on top of that, we have to think of the client side. So we think of the customer and what impacts this has on him. And however, all cybersecurity link will also be presented. I'm going to avoid presenting everybody because every time we put a lot of time and it's not really that important. All of these CVs are available online, and I'm sure everyone here has agreed with me. I will begin the session by introducing Mr. Omar from Ernst & Young. Omar is an expert in his field, and I've worked with him closely on many things. Omar, would you like to begin your nice story?
Sure.
What we call the economics of it all?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I hope everyone and most of you will get the benefit of this session today. My name is Omar Sofanati. I'm a manager in EY Forensic Technology team. I have around 14 years experience with cybersecurity and cybercrime investigation services. Currently, I'm working as EY manager. I'm covering the Middle East and North Africa for cyber investigation and digital forensics.
Would you like to continue with your presentation?
Sure. Can you
please? This is the format we agreed on for today.
Yeah, so during my presentation, I would like to talk about the link actually between the cybersecurity and digital forensics. How the link, we have the link between digital forensics and cybersecurity. Currently, the cybersecurity and digital forensic are integrated with each other. We can't work, we can't have SOC, dedicated SOC without having digital forensic and proper incident response strategy in place. So next slide, please. And this is the map will show you how, currently SOC is implemented, how it's integrated between the cybersecurity and digital forensic. As you see, the main service catalog now is digital forensic and malware analysis directly implemented and integrated in the full function of the SOC center. Next slide, please. Then I would like to talk about the main risk on OT system, on operational technology risk. So, we all know about the cyber risk on computers, on firewall, but there is hidden risk about the OT and the OT environment, how the cyber attack will hit the OT environment. Of course, the OT environment is less secure than our normal environment, especially now it's published on the internet, so that the risk and threats of OT technology is very high. And then I give some example. Next slide, please. This is some, shortcut about the recent incident happened worldwide on OT systems. So we know that it shut down the main power in Ukraine, and there is a lot of attack in Germany. The US also attack on energy grid from OT servers. This is, just to show us how much, it's critical, the OT technology, and how the cyber attacker can hit this part of our network, and what is the results of this attack. Next slide, please. Then this is in general why why OT is less secure than normal network, than the corporate network, let's say, because it's almost outdated technologies use it. There is SCADA USB port, sometimes it's enabled. There is no proper audit or follow up on the OT system itself. The network configuration and the internal monitoring is absent almost on 90% of the company based on our statistics and the previous investigation of similar attacks. So there is also poor password standard usage, lack of incident management. During our assessment, I mean, we didn't see actually a clear incident response on the OT and the related network to operation technology. Next, please. Then, and this is some sample of actual really attack happened on OT system, just to show you how it starts from the attacker itself at step one. They use like zero-day attack or something else, USB attack or whatever. Then the detection happened. The detection happened. This is the part two. It's very important. The point two. Without point two, the attack will be noticed at the end when we do incident response. But if we have something, we call it compromise assessment in place, or threat hunting, or early detection implemented within the OT systems, we will know about this attack at early stage, and we can avoid it actually without, I mean, having impact on the overall daily operation. Next, please. And from our experience with investigating a lot of cyber attack during COVID-19, we have selected that ransomware was top one of the attack happening. And actually recently we start investigate ransomware on main servers, on very important server rather than the normal laptops or working laptops. So the attack is taking another step now. I mean, they force people to pay the ransom, and there is some steps that we need to take into consideration during responding to the ransomware attack. We should handle in digital forensic very carefully during the ransomware attack, starting from evidence collection, how we collect the evidence, the ransom notes, anything related to the attack is very important. From step one is to know how to respond to such attack. Step two, to understand if there is remaining attack in the network on another kind of ransomware within the network that we don't know about it. So at the end, responding to ransomware attack is very critical and require pure and very focused digital forensic activity to respond properly. Next, please. Last thing I want to say, like regarding our working from home now, COVID-19 and the rest of cyber threats, that some steps should be taken into consideration to mitigate cyber attack or to reduce the risk of attack, like testing the VPN, monitoring the IT environment now currently. I mean, even more than before, because now we are working from home. There is a lot of stuff, I mean, going on during the from the VPN. We should, I mean, have threat intelligence and threat hunting in place for both environment, the working from home environment and the corporate network that within the company. Regular review of the requirements, having play for each incident. This is all the recommendation that I would recommend, I mean, to make ourselves.
Omar, if I may ask a quick question before we move to our next, because this question is very interesting. What is the economic value of the failure of a factory in an oil and gas environment? Which, and I want everyone to know here that it doesn't matter whether this factory was actually, you know, the valves were actually closed by human beings, or has been hijacked by terrorists, or has been attacked by such malware and such ransomware. The actual economic outcome is extremely the same. I just want Omar to touch on this because this is something we have to discuss in the next, with the next speakers as well.
Sure, definitely. If we take example, oil and gas, they all have like business continuity plan in place. And we touch this area, especially when we do when we do business impact analysis. So we know exactly for each minute, if the system will drill, I mean, stop, I mean, like for 1 minute, how much it will cost the company. So if the ransom will hit the CPU of the driller or the CPU or the control unit of any field work, we know exactly in advance how much it will cost us. But based on the recent experience, I mean, with similar attack on bank, the ransomware hit the main API with with another exchange server. So it cost like around $42 million in 1 hour.
Thank you. I'm done.
The main transfer between the exchange house and
it's clear. It's clear.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And
thank you.
I would like now to just move quickly to Bernard. Bernard, are you there? Can you show up and tell us more about yourself and what you plan to tell us today?
So yes, I'm here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I am, as you see, working at the moment for the University College in Dublin. The reason for that is actually what I would like to talk about today, because I'm teaching there in forensic computing. And if you could change to my presentation, please. I would like to give you a little background on what happened in the last, let's say, 30, 40 years. Okay.
You're going to spend how many minutes on those? 30 years?
Well, I started in, basically in '93, I got my first computer. And I don't see my presentation, so I just tell you the story.
Where's the slide?
That was actually what happened. Was that I had a Macintosh at home, and they found a dead body somewhere, and next to the dead body was a Macintosh computer.
Oh,
so
the actual body, a dead person?
Yes. So it was the victim of a murder case, and since they knew in the police force, and that I remember was '93, that I have a Macintosh at home, they said, "You're the expert, you investigate that thing." So we basically did everything wrong we could do wrong, which means we confiscated the computer, we brought it to the office, we plugged it in, we started it up, and suddenly saw only Arabic letters on it. So,
Arabic or Arabish?
Arabic. So we called the judge and the prosecution service and said, we need a translator. He actually agreed to having a translator, but he said, everything you find on the computer, you print out and give it to the translation service. Just think about it. Okay, so that's how the whole story started. That's how I got in. And I wanted to give you a brief overview of what happened. And if I'm not sure if I can, now, can you click on this little speaker symbol, please? Okay, that's not working, obviously, because the sound is on my machine. So that what you should actually hear is the sound of the first modem that was connected to the telephone.
Oh, we know that sound.
You know that sound. I think it's quite nostalgic to hear it again. But that was about that time. So cybercrime started like in the 70s, but only on financially interesting computers. So there was only the financial area was actually dealing with computers. And that was the reason why in the first years, the financial crime units were actually investigating computers. And that changed. So as I said, I joined in about '93 with this story I just told you. And what you see here on this picture, which I found today, is kind of the development. And you also see the rise of data. So the amount of actually attacks and of course the rise that happened. And if you look at it, the guys became more and more gained more and more expertise over the years. And I would like to tell you just basically 3 stories. And if you could switch to the next slide. One of them is that cybercrime changed a lot. So we looked very much into content, but if you look in economics today, content is not so interested anymore. It's more the connection. What are you actually looking for? Who are you connected with? what raises your interest. And I had a case back in 2008 where there was a terrorist attack in Colombia, and the guys confiscated computers, and Hugo Chavez, the then president of Venezuela, said all these files were manipulated. So I got these computers on my desk. By the way, the computers you see here are actually the real ones. And they said, the only job you have is to prove that we did not manipulate the data. And there were actually two findings. One was that we found like 19,700 manipulated data on the computers, but they were all machine manipulated. So just imagine you open a laptop, you plug in a USB key, you attach whatever storage, this writes something in the registry, which is kind of a manipulation, but it is not a human-made manipulation. The other reason why I'm showing this slide is that this job is not really an office job. When they published this picture up there in a couple of South American newspapers, I actually got serious threats against my life.
Oh, is that you?
That young man in the middle is me.
He looks older. You look younger now. Oh,
so Chavez wanted to see me dead. And we had over the years a couple of computers where there were explosives inside. So when we opened it up, they were supposed to explode. So it's not kind of a really safe and secure job. So that was one of the stories. The next one, next slide, please. That was another case. And I'm showing you that on purpose, obviously, because of the upcoming World Cup in Qatar.
Very relevant. Take your time.
So my last job at Interpol before I left was to support them in watching what's going on in South Africa. And I did that from my office in Lyon, so quite far away, but we had teams in South Africa that actually could do something. And the map you see here was the internet situation back then. So you can imagine we had a lot of stuff to do. And if you can click on this map, please.
Which map? You mean the green?
Yeah, no, it's good.
Oh, okay.
It's good. So this is the situation we have now. So you see that the internet connections quite increased over the 10 years. And right now, they're building a new cable which connects Google and Facebook basically directly to Africa. And I spent that time trying to kind of educate African police forces on what the consequences will be. And that, by the way, was also the time where we created the Arabic Working Party on IT crime in Amman. Very interesting. Was great expertise I met there. And since I worked so much in Africa, people got to know about me. And if you can switch to the next slide, please. I was hired by Dell, and my job was actually to respond to the new challenges in the IT security world or in the forensic world. So what we tried at the beginning is to move the standalone forensics into the data center. There was an auditing issue if you think about WikiLeaks, for example, and similar issues. So we needed to get away from the standalone forensic solutions into the data center. And the interesting thing, that's why the logo is there, which you see there on the side, is that the first thing Dell did was to send me to Qatar, to the Interpol General Assembly. So that was my first visit back in 2010 to this beautiful place. And I need to say I really enjoyed it. Over the years, I moved from forensics into digital cities, and this is one of the control centers that you see here. And I'm not, if you want to know more about it, you get my contact details at the end, but can you move to the next slide, please? So I've been talking about 2010 in South Africa. I'm now talking about 2022 in Qatar, and I spent over the last 2 years, more or less, a lot of time in Qatar, helping several institutions to install new things like access control, facial recognition, crowd control issues. You're just building a new underground system or metro system, let me call it that way. So we try to support mainly actually the police to help them getting ready for the whole thing. But why I showed you the internet map before, and this is the current internet web of Arabic countries, and this is only undersea cables, so no satellite or land connections. I think there should be put a lot of effort, and I just, while Omar was talking, got the approval to mention.
If I may, Bernie, if I may
sure.
stop you now, because I will go back to this. So we will save this, and I think some of the questions that will come will be more specific. I'd spent a lot of time on the bidding for FIFA 2022 Qatar. And I was part of ICT and all of these cables, and it's very complex, but it works. May I now move to my, I would call my friend Felix, who brought me to the world of forensics. I had no clue that anything forensics like this existed. Felix, could you please take the video from everyone and start your thing?
Marwan, thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to join that panel. Other than Bernard, I think very interesting introduction, and it's my presentation is pretty much close related to yours, Bernard. I have never worked for law enforcement, but I have worked for many years within an auditing company to support the state attorney's office. I was focusing on financial fraud cases, but yeah, I left that business almost 3-4 years ago, and yeah, and started to develop own AI-based solution, which we are offering law enforcement globally. And the reason why I just did it and left my old job is that I wanted to do certain workflows I've seen just smarter. And some of these topics I just would like to talk about, challenges, trends, and solutions. Bernard has already mentioned. If we start the presentation on the first slide, you will see certain challenges in mobile forensics. I'm focusing a little bit on mobile forensics because this is my clear focus on it, not that much digital forensics. Mobile forensic is part of the digital forensic section. And you, Bernard, you have already mentioned the enormous increase of volume of data which has been, and information which has been created. If we see, take a look from 2010 to 2020, we started with 2 zettabytes. That's 2 billions of terabytes. Now it's a factor of 30. And if you take a closer look on the data types, we started in the mobile forensic investigations focusing more on text, images, and shifted slightly to video. And recently, one of the big challenges is voice. Data is not any longer stored on the device itself. It's moving. There are also some kind of shifting ongoing. The data is moving from the device to the cloud. Certain messengers, you will hardly find any kind of data on the device, and certain data points like location history will definitely find in the cloud a better place to look for it. Another, if you go back to the challenges, you jumped a little bit. I've only 3 slides, so I would like to stay within on the challenges in mobile forensics. I would like to talk about growing backlogs. When I started my work in mobile forensics, we already had these enormous backlog. If you talk without naming the authority, if you talk about that topic, certain agencies, authorities will talk about 6 months of backlog. Certain authorities even told me that they have, depending on the type of crime, that they've evidence not dealt with, which is almost 3 years old. So this is definitely a backlog, limited resources. We started training a certain country, educating them in mobile forensics. Every year we are training almost 100 mobile forensic experts in that country. But from the size, it's a European country, from the size of the European country, they don't stay in that field. So at least within Europe, we have this trend, this challenge that people are also leaving that business, not happy with the payment situation or whatever. So if you are in the luck to even attract good people, then it's pretty hard to keep the skilled personnel or even to find it. And also difficulties establishing device priorities. This is nowadays we don't have only one device. So if you're seizing something, you will collect not only one device, and it's for the investigator important to select which one is the relevant one, on which device is the evidence I would like to start my investigation, and so on.
Can I ask you a question?
Please do so.
You've done this in IBM before. Is this what you just said?
I mean?
Where did you come up with these ideas? In your old company? When you came out and you established?
No, I was focusing on that, but during a training in a northern training for immigration unit in Northern Europe,
okay.
And that was how I got.
So this is really your IP.
Yeah.
I believe we have spoken about areas of cooperation that we can do something in Qatar that would work with your, and we will touch on this later in the session, because we have started to talk almost 6 months ago, and we've come a long way.
So let's talk about the last challenge. And yes, it's obvious that it's time consuming, and it's time consuming to attack and get access to the device. It's also time consuming to analyze the device. It's always a cat and mice game, how to really get the access to the device. And the next page illustrated how much media you will find on a device. And I've just looked it up for this presentation on my last 20 cases we had within the company. We are still doing expert witness work for Austrian state attorneys. And some statistics show that we have at average more than 50,000 images on the device. We have almost 1,000 videos on average on a device. We have a lot of voice messages. This is coming more and more popular. We've got messages in total. It heavily depends if we could get the data, because sometimes the decryption stops us to analyze that. We find on an average device 4,600 location data. As I said, you will definitely find much more if you have cloud access and analyze the location history. We have on an average 800 Wi-Fi's, and almost in every second case we will find tokens to access.
Felix, I have to stop you because I need to move now to Mr. Yasser Hamza. Yasser, are you there? Yes, I can see you smiling, and you're always in the best possible tie I've ever seen. You always have the best tie. Where do you get those from? We want Yasser to begin his conversation. You introduce yourself as well, because you can do this better than me.
Okay, So my expertise is mainly in information security. But I have, through the area of security incident response and monitoring, this is where my work overlapped with forensics. The focus for me is for organizations such as industrial organizations and oil and gas, like Omar explained, how to respond to incidents and use forensics, especially live forensics, because live forensics is different from file system forensics. So this kind of approach is a bit different, because our objective is to reduce the impact of incidents on the organization and respond quickly and recover even quickly. I think Omar touched on that in his nice slides. So this is the areas I focus on. One of the things that I wanted to highlight is that sometimes there is a conflict between law enforcement and the organization's objective, because sometimes if we do want to preserve evidence and to defend a case, it might require shutting down some computers, and that can mean a lot of loss for our business. So there is always this kind of balance, and some organizations might not even report the cases to law enforcement because of this.
So you are also an IoT organization. I mean, you the mix, but you are,
yes.
At the end of the day, you are one of those who Omar spoke about. So
exactly. So first of all, I'm not representing my company.
I understand, but that's the background.
Yeah. So my background is that I work with industrial control system companies, and the thing is, in this context, it's very important to understand, the forensic. Of course, even the traditional forensic analysis is important, because sometimes we need to know how the incident happened a long time after we discovered it. That was like years back, when the time from discovering an incident and the incident actually happening, or the breach actually happening, was very long. It was years. So we found ourselves most of the time doing post-mortem analysis, just like the traditional, people do in the morgue. So in that case, we would look at something that happened like maybe a year back, and look doing file system analysis to build a timeline of exactly how this attack happened, in order to remove all the artifacts, we call them. And those artifacts left by the attacker, if we don't remove them, then we didn't recover, actually, because still they might have their hooks inside our organization.
I used to work in a bank, just to catch up on this, Yasser, before I move. And I still remember something I handled. We had to go back, and where I used to work, without mentioning the name, we kept data forever.
Yes.
We had amazing investments in data. The biggest, we had like huge investments in data and various degrees of safety and backups. It was everything I did for a year. And when we had a problem, we were able to pinpoint the needle in a haystack.
Exactly.
Because if you have the data, then you're protected. If it's backed up sitting somewhere else, you're protected, because at the end of the day, your data will tell you where to look most of the time. And I believe this is something that you have alluded to. The challenge. We're running out of time. Yes, sir. We're running out of time. I will come back to you for sure. I think the others should pay for this, not you, but I'll come back to them. So they have to pay. Now, my friend from RNS, Yasser Hamza, as I was, please just stick to the 5-minute rule and begin your work.
Haris, actually.
Yeah.
Haris, yeah.
Sorry, Haris Hafiz. From
No issue.
RMS.
Road and short, yeah, RMS. Yeah, so hello everybody. Thank you for being on this discussion today. My name is Haris. I'm working for Road and Shorts as the regional sales manager, responsible for the cyber defense portfolio. During this session, I will try and give my perspective on cybercrime and cyber threats, mainly focusing on how organizations can utilize the technology, policies, as well as processes to mitigate or minimize those threats or the risks. So, talking about digital forensics, to give you a short perspective, definitely plays a very important role in determining the threat actors and to determine the ways and the means they use technology to exploit the underlying vulnerabilities in the systems and processes. But as the other panel members mentioned, there are a lot of challenges. One of them, as Felix pointed out, is time. I mean, when you talk about forensics or cyber attacks, there's always a race against time to gather enough evidence to get to the actual threat actor. And generally, when we see in the operational environment, the threat actors, they're generally always a step ahead in hiding their tracks, using sophisticated techniques, using encryption or obfuscation, or even planting false evidence to mislead the investigators. And when we look at the impact on organizations, I mean, as a business organization or as a government organization, in the event of cyber attacks, the damage is already done, and they can investigate as much as they can later on. But if they're not using the right technologies or processes to begin with, I mean, they will always be on the losing side. So, I mean, coming to the topic of cybercrime, it is first very important to understand what these threat actors are, what threats are there, and what risks they pose to the organization. And finally, what methods can you use to minimize or mitigate those risks? And when we see these days, I mean, the most prevalent techniques that the attackers are using right now are phishing, mainly phishing emails with trojans or malicious attachments or links, or even, excuse me, or even malware or exploit kits embedded in legitimate websites. I mean, these techniques can be used by attackers to trick the normal user to download or install malware, viruses, ransomware, or any such kinds of malicious code. And roughly 70% of all these attacks, they're carried out using browsers or the visited websites. When we talk about browsers, the active content that is inherent in the browsers like Flash or JavaScript or ActiveX, I mean, these are very problematic as they are able to run external code very easily on your computer, and they can ultimately access the data infrastructure.
So you're talking about weak points at the end user.
Yes.
So this
exactly.
is like,
yeah. So I mean,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So looking from a user perspective or an organizational perspective, these are the aspects that they need to consider when they plan to mitigate cybercrime or cyber threats to their organization. As an example, quickly, let's look at a popular Trojan by the name of Emotet. If you can just move to the next slide, please. It has been around since 2014 in the form of banking Trojans, but it has evolved far enough, and it's now not only limited to the financial sector. I mean, now Emotet is everywhere. Again, from forensic investigations, it has been discovered that Emotet is not a homogeneous malware, so it keeps on evolving, and it uses a multi-staged attack scenario. I mean, as you see in the figure here, so there are primarily 3 stages, in which the first stage, the Trojan, it finds its way into the endpoint or the IT infrastructure, mainly by tricking the user itself to click on a seemingly harmless link, but behind that link, there's always a a malicious code that runs in the background. And when the user clicks on that link, then silently the encryption software for the ransomware, this is uploaded on your systems, on your IT infrastructure, and ultimately all the critical data becomes inaccessible. And finally, then what you know that these attackers, they demand ransom to be paid to decrypt your components, but again, this can take weeks or days, or worst case, I mean, you're left with practically a pen and a paper to work with, right?
Harith, thank you so much for this wonderful information. I'm sure a lot of this will be shared online. We have really 15 minutes left, and we would like to begin our Q&A session, if you don't mind. The format of those Q&A sessions is simple. I will read them for you, or maybe can you read them, by the way? Well, am I the only guy who reads them? I'd rather not read them. Well, it seems like I have to read them. What are the common warning signs of data theft in an organization? What should raise red flags from the years of experience you all have in this field? You all have in this field. Oh, okay. So we must all answer this question, but very quickly. You really all have 20 seconds. And we begin with you, the last one in the crowd. Hafid, my friend, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, the most important aspect to consider is visibility. If you want to be able to determine whether your data is leaking, the first thing to do is have appropriate solutions in place that make your network visible to your IT or your security department. If you do not have visibility into the infrastructure, into the data that is being sent or received from your organization, there's essentially no way to determine if data is leaving or leaking out.
Thank you. Who else would like to answer this from our panelists? Yeah, I would like to invite Yasser, if you don't mind, because Yasser comes from an organization that has a lot of red flags around these things, and you don't have to tell us anything about where you come from, as far as the job.
So I was about to answer the question in writing. You see me trying to type answers. So the thing is, it's a very hard question to answer. And sometimes it's you see the red flags when it's too late. This is why I felt I was answering it with a heavy heart, because usually when you see the red flags, they are already red. And the thing is, I would say the things that the red flags, and then you judge whether it's a good thing or not. Usually,
not me, the audience.
Yeah, I mean the audience.
Them, yeah. Those people.
Yeah, because that you can understand why I felt bad about my answer, because
I know.
The red flag would be mentions on social media and mentions in dump sites like Pastebin and dark web or deep web, two different categories. So mentions in these areas are very, very important. And by the way, people can respond when they see, because sometimes these leaked data, we can respond to the incident and prevent
the data's
more leak.
You see, the question here for everyone. I mean, I spent, I would say, enough time in organizations that are similar to this question came from. The biggest problem, in my opinion, is lack of understanding in your own organizational structure and fabric and HR and brand about the value of your data and your infrastructure as far as technology investment is concerned. And I've heard it many times. People tell me, we don't want to speak Chinese, you speak Chinese, we'll talk our language, we'll make money for you. And I tell them, you're really not this is not the future. And IT is not something you can treat as a book that you read once and you put away. And I have actually been through cases that had already, moved actual money from A to Z. And I'm not talking about my old job, because I was also doing consultation for many banks in the region. And they had to find out who this person was, and it took us almost 6 months of investigation. We restored terabytes and terabytes of data on various servers from different systems, CCTV cameras, card printing machines, cash handling people. We had to, at the end of the day, go to the airport authority and ask them who entered at that time. It just took us so much, but it was all coming from our data. Now, the money is gone, the reputation is gone. You may recover whatever you recover, but your real loss cannot be recovered. And I think organizations need to build this culture. And this is the culture we're always trying to talk about. It is not something you can touch. It is not a single flag, it's everything. That's the flag I would look for. Is this too philosophical? Does anybody want to say something more technical?
Yeah, I would say, Marwan, something else here, if possible.
Felix wants to say something, and then you, and then Felix, sorry. Omar, sorry, and then Felix.
Yeah,
Please.
okay. I mean, also, regarding the red flags for data leakage, I would say insider threats, there is a special framework to study the insiders. Just to understand their behavior and how they act with the data, okay? And this will, give you some indication if someone already leaked data from your network. In addition to also network monitoring and see that the size of upload of the data, okay? But if we go also to more complicated cases when the user use SSL encryption, so I would say like DLP system will solve this issue.
Felix, would you like to add something? If somebody can unmute.
Yeah, I would like to keep it very short. In my point of view, most of the companies have a clear strategy when it comes to classic PC and their existing network, but only very few companies have include the mobile devices in their strategy. So that is my advice, to also to include this and think of what kind of data you're sharing through certain communication methods.
May I move to the next question? From Anonymous. How important is forensic methodologies? How important is forensic methodologies in order to preserve data? I don't think they're related, but maybe somebody thinks something different. Would anybody want to take this answer? The most experienced among us? Bernie, the expert of experts, the boss of bosses? The one with the big white beard?
Sorry, it took me some time to get to the unmute button. So, I think preserving data and analyzing them forensically is basically just the opposite, although both sides are actually using the same methodology. Forensics is important to preserve data in a way that they can be used in front of court without with proving that no evidence has been manipulated. Data preserving, the main topic here is to preserve the data as they are needed, or as they are put in, or as they are in a database. So the only advice I would have here is in forensics, you always make 2 copies of the evidence, and I think outsourcing the data to a second venue is probably the most important challenge or issue, to have a kind of warm second data center where you have your data. But as you mentioned, data forensics and data preserving are actually 2 different things.
Okay, I have an interesting question. That on the previous question, I just want to say one thing. I thought what the right answer should be is any investment you make in saving anything you own, these are assets. And if you treat them as assets, they will give you back the right investment. And if you don't, they will also give you back the right kind of failures. I want to move to an interesting question that came again from Anonymous. I really have no clue who this guy is. Can reversible data hiding in encrypted images be carried out in digital forensics? what are the future research that can be done on reversible data hiding for increasing the embedding capacity? If I understood it, I will be giving you, I'll probably know who it is if I understood the question, but I don't actually, but I think this is very technical. Can anybody pick it up?
Maybe he or she is talking about steganography. And steganography is when you are hiding data. It's a kind of, we call it covert channel. So we are hiding data within other data. So for example, if the person who asked the question is giving images and like hiding things in plain sight. So I can embed a message inside an image or inside an audio file, inside a program.
And then encrypt it on top of that.
And we can encrypt it on top of that.
That's what this question is. This is like usually
a
box inside the box. This is like the Russian doll.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the Russian dolls when you have, and the capacity, it is well known, the mathematics for the channel capacity, we call it, the covert channel capacity is well known. Claude Shannon explained this long time back. So I don't think the research now is just
Claude Shannon is, but go ahead. You can go back to him later.
Information theory.
Okay.
Just one thing to add. We do have this kind of trend that people are sharing child sexual abuse media through animated GIFs. And so this is an example, what you just mentioned, that people are sharing this kind of data. So if you investigate this case, you probably would only see the first image of this animated GIF, and we have to dive deeper in order to get the hidden.
I have a final question. Okay. I have a final question. How about bots, spyware affecting? Bots are like the opposite of AI in fighting crime. You have bots who go after you. Is this what they mean? Well, maybe they mean something different. Has anybody picked it up? You want me to read it again? How about BOTs, bots? These are almost like avatars or machine learning intelligent conversational characters. They call bots that also talk about
maybe I can just I can try. I mean, if by bots they mean the machines that are pretending to be humans and sending traffic and all that. So definitely. I mean, when you talk about traffic analysis, there's this term called behavioral analysis, where you're actually trying to interpret the traffic that is coming out from specific machines to determine if this traffic is by a legitimate user or by some bot. So the techniques, it's heuristics or behavioral analysis and techniques like that are also present in some next generation firewalls or firewall technology as well. Or definitely, I mean, with machine learning and AI, these things are definitely touched upon.
Nice. I think this is the answer they were looking for. I hope so. If there is no other answers, no other questions, I would like to pose a question to the audience and to the panelists. Okay? A lot of you spoke about data leakage as associated with the main problem. And somebody asked me 10 years ago in a video, actually it was an interview in a security conference, and they said, what is your biggest problem? And I would say, if it's an organization that has everything it needs, all it needs to worry about now is data leaving its organization. How it's being used, what it is sitting on, what is being treated with. This is like a factory, and it is almost like a transportation system. If you enter it without seatbelts, and if you enter it without helmets, and if you don't read the manuals carefully, you may be exposing your organization to incredible disaster failures, and the value of that is very hard to catch. How can we then say, this means this is not a job that we do and go home? The reason I mentioned the old jobs to you is there is history in those organizations. History that needs to be sustained by machines, yes, but also by people. People who have organizational intelligence, who have organizational memory. And those memories are the ones that solve such puzzles and are the ones that should be used for drawing the future for a properly cyber protected organization. I'm not talking about small companies here. This needs to be, looked at by the bigger organizations around it. You can only do this if you empower your own people and if you empower your surrounding society. The idea that people come and go to do things and go, and I respect that a lot for very good experts, and we also have some of those, we send them abroad. So this is reciprocal. But when it comes to doing business with local companies and in-country value, and I think there's a big gap. We need to work closer with those organizations and encourage them to invest more of their time and skills in order for those memories not to be lost. All IT managers in Qatar become CEOs at the end. This is which is very sad. And the same thing for cybersecurity people. They don't want to be cybersecurity people because it's not viewed at the same level as somebody who would be in an airport, managing a passport window. That guy has much more respect, although they both do the same thing. And we need to respect them both in the same way. And they have different education that is required to do this. This is something I wanted to say, and I hope we can, one of the questions, maybe I want the audience to be asked at some point about this. How do you propose this problem can be solved? And to catch up with the next session, or maybe the session after, there will be a special session on this. And I'm working with Sheikh Mansour Al-Khalifa and with Mr. Naif Al-Ibrahim from Ibtikar, and from many other enthusiasts that are looking to ways to build sustainable supply chain, not only for oil and gas, because oil and gas will stop if you get the wrong virus in your network. So this has to have the same kind of weight and the same kind of attention and the same kind of investment level. We shouldn't look at it any different or any less. That's just an opinion. Anybody wants to say something before we end?
Yeah, just to build on you, build on what you had said. The most important aspect when you talk about from an organization perspective is the vision and the strategy. And I guess people in the audience who belong to the IT or the cybersecurity community, I think they should be confident enough to discuss with their senior management, with the CXO level in their organizations, to come up with a strategy and a vision to protect themselves from the prevailing threats. I mean, this is the only way. If there's no strategy at the top, then the organization will never move forward.
It has to come from inside the organization. Those who know,
right?
The organization know it best, but they need to be brave enough. They might lose their jobs. Anyway, thank you very much. I think we're out of time. And,
so I just wanted to mention one thing that
anybody wants to mention anything besides you before I go to you? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
One last message. If people want to learn anything about how to do forensics for their personal life or for their work, they can reach out to MOSECO or to the panelists to learn more.
Thank you very much. This will be recorded, it will be posted, and there will be a report produced again for everyone who did not catch. Thank you very much for your attendance. And I want to say something before I go. I am really wishing for all of those hackers out there in the white and the reds a very boring night. Take tonight off so we can all rest. Thank you. Goodbye.